All right, welcome to Rank the Movies' second week of live streaming for me. Talk about the movies that I've never seen before that I got around to watching this week, and boy, does my webcam look bad. Unfortunately, it is night, and I only have so much lighting. There's a light right behind me, but I'm pretty sure it won't. Let's check it out. Yeah, that helps, but no, that's awful. Let's get rid of that real quick. All right. Uh, I spent another week. Every other day, I watched a couple of movies that I'd never seen before, and I figured, just like last week, I'd do it again. Luckily for you people out there, maybe not luckily, depending on what you think of me doing this kind of a thing, I've only got 16 movies left, meaning I got about a week's worth of movies I've never seen before, and then that shelf will actually be empty. But I've got a huge pile of them sitting next to me, so let's start talking about them. Again, this will be in the order I watched them in over the week, and I'll just give my ideas, my thoughts on them, and we'll go from there. So first off, I have Promised Land. We have a Matt Damon. I still have awful glare even at night. Look at that, beautiful. So I've got Promised Land. Matt Damon, John Krasinski, Frances McDermott. I liked this movie. I really do. It's about a guy who works for a fracking company who goes to a small town and tries to pitch them on leasing their land to the fracking company, and an environmentalist who comes in to try to get them not to lease their land. I thought it was a really good movie. It was very interesting. It was super well done. I really liked Promised Land. And it's one I can see myself watching again, which was really good because there was a lot of that going on this week where you'll hear me say it was a good movie, but I'm never going to want to watch it again. This is one I could definitely see myself watching again. I liked it. It was definitely one. It's been sitting on my shelf for a while. I think I've actually bought it 2 or 3 times, and I finally got around to watching it, and it was definitely worth watching. Next up, we have The Hunt for Red October. Here's a Sean Connery film, also Alec Baldwin. It is based on the novel by Tom Clancy. It's a Jack Ryan movie, the first one without Harrison Ford in the lead role, and I think Ford took the role back over in the one after The Hunt for Red October. But basically, Sean Connery plays a renegade Russian submarine commander who is taking the most high-tech submarine that the Russians have, called the Red October, with a caterpillar drive, which makes the ship basically invisible to sonar. And he is trying to escape to America and turn the ship over as with himself and his command crew to kind of defect to America. And Alec Baldwin as Jack Ryan is the only person who realizes that's what's going on, as everyone else thinks it's going to be, it's a nuclear sub, it's coming to attack America. Jack Ryan figures out that no, he has to be defecting. It's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. Both Sean Connery and Alec Baldwin give super strong performances in this movie. It's worth checking out. It's a good action film, and it is. It's a really good, strong, interesting film. I enjoyed The Hunt for Red October. All right, next up we have Val Kilmer in The Super. This movie is super bad. Basically, it takes place in an upscale New York high-rise where a guy who's on the police force, he's retired, and now he's got his 2 kids because their mom is dead, died in a fire, and he moves into the high-rise and takes a job as one of the many superintendents of this high-rise. Val Kilmer plays a different superintendent, and it's people dying, and it's just not good. The movie gets interesting for about 5 minutes towards the end, and then it's just not interesting. And it has the thing in the end credits that sets up for a sequel, but this movie will never get a sequel. It's not worth a sequel. Don't watch The Super. This is a bad movie. I saw a trailer for it before another movie, and I went, I kind of want to see that. And then I sat down with it, and I went, I don't want to watch this ever again because it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Next up, I have Cat Run. Where to start with this one? It wasn't bad. I'm never gonna watch it again, but it wasn't bad. It was definitely worth the hour and a half it runs. Um, so you got Paz Vega stars in this movie, or is in this movie as the headlined star and is the girl on the side cover. She is a prostitute who steals a hard drive from one of her tricks and is trying to use it to blackmail the people she stole it from who are trying to find her. And there are these 2 random private detectives who are also looking for her that she ran into. It's one of those, like, really chaotic, almost like a Guy Ritchie film, like a Snatch, Rock and Rolla, like one of those kind of multi-storyline films. It's just not done as well. Again, it's not a bad movie. It's kind of interesting. It's one I'm not going to watch again, but it was definitely. I didn't regret watching it like with the Super. I regretted watching that. This one, I just don't see myself watching it again. Cat Run, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not, it was a pretty decent movie. It's just not one I'm ever going to watch again. And for those of you playing at home, The Super is right now the worst movie I've seen in the last week. It will get surpassed. Next up, we have Lara Croft Tomb Raider. I don't know what I was expecting with this movie. I'm not going to go into the details because it's Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Most people get the general gist of this movie. Um, it's it wasn't good. It wasn't like god awful. It just wasn't entertaining. It was kind of there, and it's 2 hours, and I'm glad they didn't make it longer than 2 hours. It has a sequel. I own the sequel. I'm not watching the sequel. It's not in the 16 that are still up for being watched. It is just that's it. This is the end of me watching Tomb Raider films. I've watched the one that came out a couple of years ago, and I didn't care for it. And I didn't care for this one, and I'm not going to give the sequel a chance. So next up, we have Sideways. Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church are a pair of guys. Thomas Hayden Church is getting married, and for his bachelor party, he is taken to wine country. And throughout the way, Thomas Hayden Church is trying to get laid. Paul Giamatti is just trying to find love. I really liked it. It's a super interesting movie. So you should just, if you've never checked out Sideways, check it out. It is definitely worth the time to sit down with it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very well written movie. I thought the actors did a great job with this film. And overall, I thought I was really enjoying what I was seeing with this film over a lot of the other stuff I had already watched. I did really enjoy Sideways. And if you've never checked it out, check it out. I want to say hi to Courtnut. That's me, who's joined us. So hi. So there you go. It's live. All right. Next up is a movie I really enjoyed and is definitely towards the top of the movies I really enjoyed over the last week. That is The Current War. This one came out on Blu-ray on Tuesday, and I got it. I watched it, and I really liked this movie. You have Benedict Cumberbatch, who plays Thomas Edison. You have Michael Shannon, who plays Westinghouse, and you have Nicholas Hoult playing Nikola Tesla. And they're each, and it's kind of that story of how the electricity got decided, like, because we had alternating current and direct current, and they're two very different. And this is kind of that battle between Edison and Westinghouse primarily. Tesla comes in throughout the movie to kind of give his 2 cents on the whole thing. It was super interesting, super well acted. I loved this movie, and definitely, if you are interested in something like that, check it out. It's worth it. This very might be the best movie I saw over the last week. Just overall, it's well paced. It's not super obnoxiously long, and it tells a good story. I really enjoyed it, and I really highly recommend it. All right, next up is a movie I have a story for. It's called The Big Picture, starring Kevin Bacon. This movie also stars Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's in about 3 scenes. J.T. Walsh, who actually is in a fairly large amount of it. Terry Hatcher, who's in about 5 scenes. And Martin Short, who wasn't credited in the movie, but is on the box. All right, so the story behind this movie is I picked up a copy of it at a pawn shop early in the week, and I didn't check it when I was at the pawn shop because I'm an idiot. I got home, I looked at the movie, and it was one of the worst things I've ever seen, like the disc. And I went, oh, maybe it'll play. It played for about an hour, then it started skipping, then it gave up on life. So I ordered another copy off of eBay and finished watching it because I really liked this movie. I was really intrigued about it. Kevin Bacon plays a director who's just getting out of film school. He won an award, and he's being looked at to do his own movie. And it's just his trials and tribulations and how you get run through the ringer in Hollywood. It's great. It's directed by Christopher Guest, who did Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show. So that mockumentary style. He is the director of this film as well. It is super well done. And just the sequences of Kevin Bacon, like visualizing his life in a movie or what his movie should look like versus what it's turning into as people keep giving their suggestions on it. It's super amusing. It's super fun, and I highly recommend if you've never seen The Big Picture. If you can find a copy of it, get it. I had to go on eBay because I couldn't find it on Amazon, and check it out. It is worth it. I liked The Big Picture. All right, next we have Prince in Purple Rain. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this movie. I mainly knew it from Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back and just people talking about Purple Rain, but Moore's Day and the Time I knew from Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So this is what they're referencing to in the entire movie is Purple Rain. Basically, it's Prince's early career story of him rising up as a talent. The biggest problem I have with this movie, and it's so unnecessary that I have a problem with this, but I have it anyways. The main Prince plays the kid. That's all he's referred to in the entire movie as the kid. His mother is referred to as his mother. His father is referred to as father, and he is the kid because he's their kid. He never has a name. People talk about him in passing and go, the kid. It's like everyone just said artist formerly known as Prince, and this predates that by a lot. It's that same kind of idea that he has no identity beyond the kid. It was weird. It took me back, but it didn't take me away from enjoying the movie. I just like it was one of those cringy kind of it's the kid, okay. But I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting movie. Great music, obviously. Prince has fantastic music, as does Morris Day in the Time. If you've never seen Purple Rain, check it out. It is definitely one worth checking out. Next up, I have Killers Anonymous. This one stars Tommy Flanagan, who some of you may know from Sons of Anarchy, Jessica Alba, and Gary Oldman. This is such a great concept. Basically, it's about where do killers go if they want help? So it's kind of like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting for people who professionally kill things. So it's a great concept. The movie, unfortunately, isn't that good, but it's a really good concept. And again, the concept's worth checking out. I'm not going to say it's one you're going to watch over and over and over again, but it's worth kind of checking out once just if you're in one of those whimsical moods, because that's really what it is. It's a bunch of professional killers sitting in a circle talking about being a professional killer. As you know, there's a greater plot of an assassination that's gone wrong earlier in that day to a presidential candidate, and these people being set up by government agencies. Like I said, it's not the best movie in the world. It's all right. It's definitely worth checking out once. But like I said, it had such an interesting plot, so much promise, and I think it just fell a little short. Also, Gary Oldman, Tommy Flanagan, Jessica Alba, they're all really good, and they are good in this movie as well. All right, moving right along, we have Tremors 5, Bloodlines. I really like Tremors. You can't see it because my head is actually there it is. That's the Tremors laser disc directly behind me over my head. I like Tremors. I like Tremors 2. The rest of them are just a kind of a downhill slide of crap, and this one's right up there with them. There is a sixth one, which I might watch one day, but I have no interest in doing it anytime soon. This movie just bored the crap out of me. There are worms in Africa. The worms and the ass blasters and all the things show up in Africa, and Burt Gummer goes to fight them. That's that movie. Don't watch it unless you're doing a marathon of Tremors films. Then do it. Then why not? Next up is The Siege. We've got Denzel Washington, Annette Bening, and Bruce Willis. A group of terrorist cells show up in New York City and begin blowing the crap out of things to get their leader released. Denzel Washington plays the FBI man who's in charge of that area of New York, and he's trying to figure it out. Annette Bening works for the State Department, and Bruce Willis plays an army general who gets eventually sent in when martial law is declared, when these cells continue to blow up and kill people, including the FBI building itself. I liked it. I don't see myself watching it again, but I really did like The Siege. I thought it was interesting. It was entertaining. And again, I don't think it's got rewatch value on it, but it wasn't a bad movie. It was actually pretty good. Like I said, that's kind of what happened this week. There's a lot of movies that went, I don't have rewatch value, but I'm still good. And this is just another one of those. It was good. I don't see myself rewatching it again. But, Denzel, Annette Bening, and Bruce Willis all give super strong performances. And I have no idea why Denzel can just go by just his first name and everyone else, I need to use their entire name. So I'm going to set this one off to the side and move right along to Once Upon a Crime. This one I was hesitant on. I bought it going, ooh, look at this cast. We've got John Candy, James Belushi, Sybil Shepherd, Sean Young, Richard Lewis, and George Hamilton. So pretty decent cast. Then I looked up this movie and went, nobody likes this movie. Well, I'm odd duck because I liked this movie. Basically, it's a crime story. You have a bunch of couples who are going to Morocco, I believe it is, and they eventually there's a dead body, and these people are all held in some way, end up getting connected to it, even though they're vaguely connected to it overall. Two of the characters find a dog and are bringing it back to the owner, who happens to be the person that's dead. And that's how they get connected into it. And it's a good comedy. It's got a lot of great funny lines in it, and just the delivery of those lines from actors like Richard Lewis, John Candy, Jim Belushi, and Sean Young. It is a funny movie. I really did enjoy it. Um, and I was entertained by it. It's just a good throw down and laugh movie. I disagree with the critics on this one and say this is a good movie. Um, and if you've never seen Once Upon a Crime, just check it out. It might not be your cup of tea, but I really thought it was pretty funny. All right, for all you fans of Godzilla out there, I've got Godzilla versus or King Kong versus Godzilla. Sorry, let's get that in the right order. King Kong versus Godzilla. This is, of course, the Toho film where King Kong fights Godzilla. Um, it's super enjoyable. It was filmed to be a comedy, and it really does show. There's some good comedic lines in there. The dubbing doesn't hurt the film; it helps the film. And definitely watching a guy in a big monkey suit fight a guy in a big lizard suit is pretty amusing. By the end fight, I was kind of acting out in my head what WWE announcers would be doing for the same kind of fight. And I kind of want to edit that video together, but I'm probably not. But it's definitely on, like, in my mind going, oh, that would be fun to see that kind of video. I liked Godzilla versus King Kong. The story is simple. King Kong and Godzilla get released and eventually fight each other in the last like 15 minutes of the movie. If you like classic Godzilla films, check it out. It's like the third Godzilla film ever made, and it's the third King Kong movie ever made. Although it has no connection to the King Kong movie I watched last week or its sequel, Son of Kong. But it's still good. I really enjoyed it. And if you want to, check it out. All right, next up, I've got Chud, Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers. This is a classic in the horror genre, and it holds that status. I really enjoyed this movie. I was super surprised at, like, not even like the main cast, because there's some good actors. Like Daniel Stern is in the main cast. You may know him from Home Alone as one of the two bumbling thieves. But John Goodman is in this movie. He plays a cop who gets killed, who gets eaten by a chud. And there's some other actors in there who are just hidden that you're going, why is this? Oh, it's before they were famous. Because this came out sometime in the early 80s, I believe. It was super good. I really liked it. If you've never sat down and watched Chud, it's fun. It's an amusing movie. Basically, there's toxic waste under New York, and it's turning the homeless population into mutants who are eating people. Hence, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. And it's them starting to come out and attack New York. It's a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. I also watched it late at night, so that made it better. All right, now for the longest movie I watched this week. Magnolia. This is Paul Thomas Anderson's follow-up to Boogie Nights. So this movie is 3 hours long, and it's paced very well. I enjoyed the pacing. It moves from thing to thing very nicely. It's very well edited. It is still 3 hours long, and it did not need to be 3 hours long. This has like almost a dozen storylines in it, and like 4 of them could have been lost really quickly. It would have cut the runtime down by a lot, and you wouldn't have missed anything. Basically, the movie is about coincidence and how coincidences stack up, and all of a sudden you find out that this one coincidence over here ripples in time and creates other coincidences somewhere else down the line. It was, like I said, it's paced very well, but it's just too long. There's just too much movie here and not enough interesting. There's a lot of like placeholder, like Tom Cruise is in this movie, and it all takes place in one 24-hour period. So he spends most of the movie, he plays a oversexed guru who's trying to sell his guru product. So the majority of this movie is spent with him giving his pitch of why he's an oversexed guru to a bunch of guys, and then giving an interview. And then finally, it gets to the main part of the story, which is that he's also the estranged son of one of the other characters who's dying of cancer. That's when it finally gets to that story, and it's like the last hour of the film. The majority of his stuff is almost unnecessary, other than to set the character up. And that's just one of the examples. William H. Macy's in this movie. He's really great. They could have cut his entire storyline. It was unnecessary, and it didn't really push anything in the film along. In fact, he only really interacted with one other character, and again, that was in the last 15 minutes of the film. Otherwise, every character in his thing was just his own. His part of the coincidence was that he dates back like 15 years to some of the other characters in this movie, although he never interacts with them, and none of them are directly responsible for anything that happens in his area. So again, it's long. It's got a lot of storylines. I'd say just don't watch it. Again, it's not bad. It's paced very well, but it has stuff, and even Paul Thomas Anderson says he should have cut stuff from this film. All right, next up, I've got Dolomite. Okay, I watched the Eddie Murphy movie where they talk about the making of this movie. Dolomite is my name. I liked it. It was good. So I decided to watch Dolomite. Yeah, Dolomite. I found a copy of it. I watched it. I get it. I get why a lot of people like this movie. It's cheesy. It's campy. It's got awful editing. It's got terrible acting. It just wasn't amusing enough for me. And I watched it in the right mindset, kind of late at night, you know, kind of drinky, and it just didn't work for me. I found myself being bored more times than not. There were some legitimately funny moments of this movie and some legitimately entertaining stuff in this film. It's just not for me. Again, I get why other people I see the why people love this movie and why it stayed a cult classic. I mean, just right here from the New York Times, it was the Citizen Kane of Kung Fu pimpin' movies. I get it. I get why, but I didn't care for Citizen Kane either. So that's my opinion. I didn't really care for Dolomite. It's a hard movie to explain because the plot is just kind of all over the place as well, which, I mean, I already knew going in to expect that. But I get why. There's some great dialogue in this movie. One of my favorites, it also is said in Dolomite is my name, is to the villain, Dolomite says, you got 24 hours to get out of town, and 23 of them have already passed. It's a great moment. It's a great line of dialogue. I get it. I just wasn't a huge fan of the overall movie, even as a bad movie. I still didn't care for it that much. All right. Motherless Brooklyn is next. So this one is one I just got really interested in just by the cast on it. You got Edward Norton, Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin, and Willem Dafoe. It's based on a book. The movie's set in the 1950s. The book is not set in the 1950s, but Edward Norton decided to set it in the 1950s as an noir piece. Basically, Bruce Willis plays a private investigator who gets killed. Edward Norton is one of his under-investigators, and he goes to try to figure out why Bruce Willis was killed, what he was investigating, and how it pertains to a bunch of other things that are going on in New York at the time, involving the destruction of various slums. It was interesting. It's 2.5 hours, and it probably could have been 2 hours and been a far better movie. I did like it. I can see myself watching it again. It was enjoyable. Again, it's just a little on the long side, just a little. I can't think of many of the movies I've watched this week that have gone over 2 hours that really deserved to go over 2 hours. And that was, just another one of those examples where it just a little cut would have done it a lot of good. After that, we have Ford versus Ferrari. This was one of the Best Picture nominees of this last year. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this movie. Again, it's 2.5 hours. I don't think I could have lost some time. I don't think a lot. Maybe 15 minutes is what this is heavy. But, I mean, overall, it's a good movie. It's a well-paced movie. I really enjoyed it. Matt Damon and Christian Bale give tremendous performances in this piece of film. I just feel like it was a little heavy. And honestly, the third billed actor is John Bernthal from Walking Dead, Baby Driver. He's also The Punisher, currently on Netflix, or was on Netflix, now might be on Disney+. He is kind of important for the first 30 minutes of this film, and then he's just kind of standing in the background. The rest of it, I found it really amusing. But I know I like Ford versus Ferrari. If you've never seen it, give it a check. It's kind of worth it. All right, now's the moment everyone's been waiting for. The worst movie I've watched all week. Hands down, the worst movie. I cannot think of anything worse. I know I said a lot of negative things about the Super, and I kind of just threw Tremors 5 away. This is the worst. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. This 2.5. Oh, this is the director's cut, by the way. So it's slightly longer than the real movie, but not by much. Doesn't redeem it. 2.5 hours is what this movie runs, and it doesn't need to. It's bad. It's not a good movie. Alan Rickman is amazing in this film. I'll admit, I loved Alan Rickman in this film. The Sheriff of Nottingham was the only reason I sat through this film for 2.5 hours. Everything else about this film was really, really bad. It's the tale of Robin Hood, and I'm beginning to think I'm not really a huge fan of Robin Hood tales unless it's done comedically, like Robin Hood Men in Tights, or animated, like the Disney version. I have not seen another version of Robin Hood I really like, though I have another one, The Adventures of Robin Hood with Earl Flynn. I still have to get around to. It's in the last 16, and I still plan on watching it to hopefully redeem a live action version of this story that's dramatic. This one was just bad. It just wasn't. Even Morgan Freeman's in this thing, and he wasn't that great in it. I suggest just get Robin Hood Men in Tights. It's a lot shorter, and it's a lot funnier, and it's just a better told story. And it doesn't have the weird reveal that's unnecessary towards the end of the film that this guy is related to this guy, and there's another reveal that is just director's cut exclusive that's also completely unnecessary. I'm just moving on. All right, next is the most unnecessary movie I watched this week, The Lion King from 2019. I got over it being visually stunning in like 10 minutes, and this is a 2-hour movie. I just kept going, why am I not just watching the animated version? And why am I not just watching the animated version? Though this one, unlike the animated version, has a giraffe turd in it, and that's important. The giraffe turd is important for a scene. So that's what this has. This has giraffe turd. I think I summed that one up pretty well. All right, next I've got Cinderella. This is the Kenneth Branagh version, the live action one. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm not a huge Lion King fan. Loved the animated Lion King. Not really. Cinderella wasn't my thing when I was a kid and growing up, so I didn't watch the animated Cinderella over and over again. I liked this version. I thought it told a good story. I thought it was very well acted. It's a very beautifully done movie. This is my favorite Disney movie I've watched so far this week because there's one more in the pile. And actually, this is what I watched today. It's starting with Lion King is what I've watched today. But yeah, Cinderella, I liked it. It's the Cinderella story. It's a good time. It's interesting. All right. Before we get to the last Disney movie, however, let's talk a little more music like Purple Rain with Rocket Man. This is the Elton John biopic with Taron Egerton starring as Elton John. I liked it. I think it really told Elton John's story. I know Elton John had a lot to do with this movie and is the one that it's rated R because Elton John said his life wasn't rated PG-13. I liked it. I thought Taron did a really good job playing Elton John. You can really tell he is the one singing every song that comes out of his mouth. And it's also a jukebox opera. So it's not just, you only get his music when he's performing. His music is fully a piece of this thing. And there are full scenes that are just set to the music of Elton John. I thought it was very well done. I enjoyed the movie a lot. And definitely, I recommend it. If you're interested in the story of Elton John, check out Rocket Man. It's worth the time. It's worth the effort of watching it. And it's 2 hours worth spending. Sticking with music, how about Bohemian Rhapsody? That's right, I've never seen Bohemian Rhapsody up until earlier today. What can I say? It's Queen. This one is a little less, propelled. Like Queen wasn't all up ins on this movie, which is probably why it's PG-13. Not that it needed to be R. It didn't need to be. It's an interesting story. It was a very interesting movie. I liked Bohemian Rhapsody. I liked the story of Queen. I was interested. It's mainly Freddie Mercury, but Queen is such a huge part of Freddie Mercury's story that, it takes up the majority of the 2-hour runtime. It's actually 2 hours and 15 minutes. But the thing I found most interesting about this movie is that their best performance ever was at Live Aid. I mean, that's where the movie ends, and it really is just them recreating that performance. And it was a 20-minute performance, and that really is what the last chunk of this movie is that performance. And it was really cool to see because normally you only get like snippets of that kind of stuff in one of these movies. So it was nice to see that they just gave it the whole thing. Went, yeah, screw it, we can give 20 more minutes, um, and let 20 more minutes of Queen music be part of this. This one is not a jukebox opera, meaning the music is only maintained where it actually would be in the story. So they have to be physically playing it, physically at a concert, what have you, to use the music in the story. But it's still done very well. I enjoyed it. If you haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody, it is worth checking out. All right, that brings us to the final movie um, for this week. The final movie I've never seen before that I have watched in the last week, and that is Disney's Dumbo. Much like Cinderella, I wasn't a Dumbo fan when I was a kid. I didn't watch the animated version of Dumbo over and over and over again. I might have seen it once. There's a 90% chance Dumbo would end up on the shelf of things I've never seen before, just because if I watched it, I was an extremely small child. I like Dumbo. I liked this movie. Again, I don't see myself rewatching it, but it was a good movie. Tim Burton did a good job. It definitely doesn't look like a Tim Burton film, which I think, kudos to him for not like forcing it to look like one of his films, but it still has that element, but it's more colorful. So you're not like looking at it going, oh, that's definitely like the Tim Burton type of architecture that we're so used to seeing in Tim Burton movies. Because it's all colorful and it's bright, and that's just not what you normally see with his movies. They're normally dark movies, so it's nice to see that he went that route. Again, it's an enjoyable movie. I liked it, more than I liked The Lion King. That's just a useless movie. It's literally the animated movie with needless things added in. This is, a top to bottom retelling of the story, because Dumbo can't talk in this one really, so that makes it more interesting than just redoing the movie, and I'm glad about that. Also, Danny DeVito, Michael Keaton, Colin Farrell, and Alan Arkin all give great performances in this film. I check it out. Again, it's not one I'm going to find myself watching again, but I definitely did enjoy Dumbo. So those are the movies I've watched this week that I've never seen before off of my shelf of things I've never seen before. There are 16 movies left on that shelf. So we'll get one more of these videos most likely because I'll probably watch those over the next week, given the fact I just did 24 movies this week and 24 movies last week. All right, our regular video goes up on Wednesday. That'll be talking about the Friday the 13th franchise. If you got any questions, hit me up with them. If you like what you saw with this live stream and want to see me do more, maybe I'll do more. Who knows? My life is a little like up in the air right now about how all this COVID-19 is affecting me and what time I have available. But subscribe. Well, you had to be subscribing if you're watching this live stream, I'm pretty sure. Like the video, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.